Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to AI in Action. We are going to go ahead and get started. I have a little video to share with everyone to get us started, to kick us off. So allow me to please share that, and then we will get into our session. Thank you we're starting a little late, but we are excited to be here. Sorry about that. Going to reshare.
AI is shaping the future of every industry. Are you ready to lead the way? At Northeastern University, our AI programs go beyond theory. With hands-on learning, cutting-edge research, and a focus on ethical AI, you'll gain the skills to innovate and make an impact. Whether diving into machine intelligence, applying AI to business and healthcare, or exploring what's possible, we have a program designed for your goals. Choose from master's degrees and graduate certificates in AI, available on campus or online. No matter your industry, AI is the future, and your future starts here.
Okay, welcome. We have everyone with us here. We may have a few people joining along the way, but we'll just allow them to join as they can. Welcome tonight. We're super excited. This is our third annual AI in Action event series. My name is Shauna Fraser. I am part of the Innovation Planning and Development team under the Chancellor's Office. We welcome everyone who is here, both Northeastern students, faculty, staff, and alumni, external partners, whoever you are, however you made your way here. We're so happy to have you. I would love to introduce our presenters tonight, starting with John Wibby, who is with us. John, if you want to just say a quick hello and introduce yourself, your title, we can pass it on to someone else.
Great, thanks, Shauna, and thanks for having me. I'm an associate professor in the College of Arts, Media, and Design, specifically in the School of Journalism, though I collaborate a lot with computer scientists and network scientists within the university, and recently set up a new lab called AI Media Strategies Lab, and really looking forward to chatting with you all tonight.
Thanks, John. Tiffany Kim, can you introduce yourself to everyone?
Hello, everyone. I'm Tiffany Kim. Good evening. I am an associate clinical professor from the School of Nursing. Welcome.
Thank you. Your partner in presenting, Lance Eaton, can you introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Hey, folks, I am Lance Eaton. I'm Senior Associate Director of AI in Teaching and Learning as part of the Center for Advancing Teaching and Learning through Research.
Thank you. Jeremy Estezano from my team.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeremy Estezano. I am a senior product manager on the IPD team. I'm going to be in the Biz Apps session today, so it's great to be here, and thank you all for taking the time with us.
Thank you, Jeremy. Ryan Bender, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Brian Bender. I'm the Director of Digital Solutions and Global Client Experience. My team oversees every end user IT front-facing thing that you see, so AV support, our help desk, our phone chat support, email help desk, as well as our training team. And I'll be presenting with Jeremy on Biz Apps.
Great. Thank you. I am going to turn it over now to John to just intro our session for tonight, and then I'll give you some more details on logistics and how we're going to do this after that.
Thanks, Shauna. So I just want to talk for a few minutes here about sort of where we're at with AI technologies, both within the university and within the field a little more broadly. So I teach a course called AI and Media Industries. It's a graduate seminar. I'm teaching a version of it in the fall. And it has students, a lot are in media and communication, some from network science, some are master's students, some are doctoral students. And we've been exploring, many of the different models that are out there, including from Anthropic, which is our new university partner, and we're really thrilled about that. And in the course of the semester, we've been exploring a lot of the latest trends. So let me just talk about those for a minute, and then I'll sort of wrap up with some observations about the work we're going to do over the next 45 minutes or so. So, back in November 2022, we had the rollout, the commercial rollout of ChatGPT, much earlier model. And since then, companies like Google and Anthropic, Perplexity, Midjourney, and others have rolled out these consumer-facing LLMs and image generation capacities, and we've seen a huge amount of change. And so we've gone from basically text-based models to multimodal models, and now even video is available. But I think really there's some big changes very recently. One was that you should know about, and one was that most of the models basically were trained on sort of older internet data, and you could kind of access their intelligence, but there were sort of limits to the chronological scope of what they offered. And recently, a lot of the models have added web search so that you can, we call it RAG, retrieval augmented generation. And so we can now combine the power, the intellectual horsepower of the models with actual grabbing of external data and websites and whatnot. So that's been a really amazing trend. And the future that we've been talking about in my course, but I think the industry has been really focused on it, is this idea of agents, this idea that you would empower, bots with certain specified rules to go out and do things. It could be to book a trip or to make a purchase even. But this has many complications, and as much excitement as there is, I think there's a lot of trepidation, which comes to this core place of I think that we're going to discuss tonight, which is also ethics. And how do we want this sort of human-machine interaction to go? What would the rules be? And specifically within higher education, there are all kinds of questions about integrity, intellectual integrity, about making sure that learners truly learn. And so one of the terms that we use in sort of the scholarship around this is cognitive offloading, which is when our brains tend to slacken and get a bit lax as we let the models do all the work for us. And the thing that I like to say to the students is that at every point where you're putting an input and getting an output from an LLM, there's a choice, right? There's a choice about whether the output was high quality. There's a choice about how to modify it. There's a choice about what to do next. And if we don't also work on the neural pathways in it right up here, then we'll make poor choices. And so there's a tremendous amount of research, I think, and scholarship that needs to be done to figure out how this learning environment is really going to evolve. And I'm just super excited that Anthropic is partnering with us, because I think they are a real leader in responsible AI and AI safety. I think there's a real commitment to pioneer this education relationship. We're the first sort of university partner. So it's a super exciting moment, but there's so many unanswered questions. And so we're in some ways all kind of charting the future together. Just a word or two about tonight. One of the things about using generative AI models is that you start to discover that there's this foreign intelligence, this other alien intelligence that you're dealing with, and sometimes it behaves like a human, and sometimes it doesn't. It's sort of somewhere between a tool and an organism. And I did, what we did, the model that we use for thinking about this is literally the phrase "thinking like a model," not a runway model, but an AI. And there are going to be, if you haven't used the models very much or at all, there are going to be moments where you get outputs that sometimes seem strange. Sometimes you'll even put in the same input and you'll get a different output. And there's all sorts of reasons for this, and they're complicated. But one of the things that we should all commit to as learners is using these models, kind of getting in there, getting our hands dirty. And the more we do that, I think the higher chance we have of being able to really align and think like the model, so that we can really help it be a powerful kind of co-pilot as we do work. And so with that, let's go. Shauna, back over to you.
Great. So we are lucky enough to have 3 Anthropic friends join us tonight. We have Shannon, Allie, and Amber. Each of them are going to join our separate learning sessions, which we will break out into momentarily. So we will hear from Claude. We will also hear from our experts at Northeastern, and we're really looking forward to hearing from all of you. So the 3 sessions that we want to feature tonight in practice are learning, research, and teaching. So I'm going to be dropping a couple different links into our chat. One for, not research, business applications, one for teaching applications. And we are asking that our learner population stay here. Again, this is a choose your own adventure. So please join, or please stay here if you would like to, if you are a student and would like to learn how you can apply learning skills, or jump into business applications or teaching applications. In each of the sessions, we will be creating chatbots and running through different use cases. So please jump into any of the 3. Again, if you are a learner, please stay with us here. If you are interested in business applications, there's a link in the chat. And if you are interested in teaching applications, that link is also in the chat. Covering business applications, it will still be how do you create a chatbot, leverage chatbots for in your work. So whether it be using Excel, or perhaps resume support creation, things of that nature. And learners, we ask that if you choose a session, whether it be business applications or learning or teaching, that you stay in that session. But again, that's not a hard, fast rule. It's just we would want you to get the most out of your session. Great. All right. If we think, yes, all the sessions will be recorded and they will be posted after, so you won't miss out. Okay, great. So I am going to ask that John, you kick it over you can go ahead and start, and we will just get started with our session.
Okay, thanks. Okay, if I share my screen, Shauna?
Yep.
Right. Here we go. Okay, everybody hear me, I hope? Okay, so we're tonight in our session here, we're going to talk about how to use AI to help us study and learn. We're also going to talk about it in the context of enhancing our career and our career prospects. And so we have 2 use cases. I'll walk through both, and I would encourage you to potentially follow along as we move. And if there are questions, we'll try to take them at different intervals. Roughly, here's the agenda over the next 30 minutes or so. So we're going to learn the step-by-step process of studying and sort of doing career paths. We're going to primarily be using Claude. So if you can bring Claude up in your browser, if you intend to kind of do things in real time. Then we'll take some feedback, some Q&A. We'll have you fill out a poll, and that will be it. Things that you might need for this session, or just have them handy. Most of you will on your hard drive or in a Google Drive or something. I said the tool, which we're going to be using Anthropic's Claude. So if you're a student or faculty or staff here at NU, you have enterprise access. Yay. Also for the study use case application, will be, having a syllabus handy or a research paper or some kind of study materials will help you at least kind of sandbox and pilot what we're talking about. And then secondarily, if you had a CV or a resume or other career materials, a job description handy somewhere, again, on your hard drive or up in the cloud where you can reach it, that's going to be handy as well. Okay, so we're going to focus on Claude projects tonight, but of course I want to, and I'll explain what projects is, but I want to also just note that there are lots of other products out there like that are competitor products, or they just have different other kinds of functionality. And I, in my course, encourage students to explore and play with lots of other models. So for example, the Gemini family, which is Google's family, has GEMS. OpenAI, ChatGPT have custom GPTs. So there are other products like the Chatbot product I'm going to show you, but for tonight we're going to use Claude. So projects is the way that we can customize outputs in a way that really leverages a set of particular reference materials, instructions. Think of it as a knowledge base. We can basically take the LLM's power. We can focus it on a set of instructions and reference materials, and then we can get a powerful engine that can do something that, especially for repetitive tasks, is really, really powerful. So think about a repetitive task as like studying for exams, or think about a repetitive task as applying for a whole bunch of jobs. Many of my students are applying for a lot of co-ops, and so there's a whole sequence there. There's going to be limitations in all of this, and we'll keep talking about constraints and limitations. Some of the limitations just have to do with how much material you can kind of feed into the chatbot's knowledge base. Others have to do with the capabilities that a particular chatbot has. And we'll talk about limitations, and we can take questions. So let's hop into our first use case, which is studying with Claude. And one of the great things that this capability affords students and learners every age is the ability to take a body of material and to use the LLM to quiz us, to make flashcards, to make study guides, to help reinforce learning, basically to be a super tutor who can be your guide on the side, who can help you with learning of all kinds. And that learning could be art history, it could be coding, it could be virtually anything under the sun. Because one of the things that Claude has, again, I'm specifying Claude, but many of the other models out there, it has this capability to customize our learning, to personalize our learning, and to make it really, really valuable in a way that, frankly, as professors and teachers, we often can't do because the scale is just prohibitive. All right. So think about this as chatbots and learners, all the way across the university, but also all the way across society. I think there's tremendous potential here if done right. And I don't think, by the way, that this cuts out the need for human instructors. In fact, one of the things that I find with my students is that because LLM use is often siloed, where it's just you and the LLM, it is absolutely electric and thrilling when we start using them in teams or even just in pairs. And so to have that kind of human interaction and feedback with the LLM and another human is often really electric, because we often do it in isolation. Okay, so we're going to create a project. We're going to provide it context. We're going to provide it instructions and knowledge, and then we're going to put it to work. Sorry. So we're going to use Claude. We're going to kind of tell it what to do, and provide examples if we want to. I'm not going to do much of that, but I'm going to show you how to do all this. We talk about reference materials and a knowledge base. We're going to do, we're going to load some materials in. Hopefully you have something sitting up in the cloud or on your hard drive, and then we're going to ask it to do something. Okay, so here's the interface. These are screenshots that I took as I was kind of setting up for this particular talk. And this is a classic kind of LLM interface. They basically all have kind of similar looks and feels. There's what looks like, if you haven't used them at all, it looks kind of like a search bar. But one of the things that you need to do mentally, intellectually, is realize that this is not a search bar. So while many of the LLMs now have the capacity to go out and search for things, what they're really good at is helping you reason through things and helping you answer things and in this case, helping you to learn. If you've opened up within the model within the NU enterprise, you may see some custom kind of conversation starter projects down here. So when I open up mine, I see study project, for example. And that means that the great Anthropic team has actually prepared a set of instructions already that's sort of off the shelf, ready to go, ready to help us learn. And the model is kind of ready to behave in this kind of tutorial way that will set us up to do things like flashcards and exam prep and all of that. So hopefully you see that. If you don't, I'll loop back to sort of how you would get to where we're going. Okay. So far so good, I hope. Oh yeah, so here, if you didn't have that, but you wanted to start a project, and you think of a project as a kind of custom internal chatbot, where you can kind of refine it and tailor it to what you want to do with instructions and with reference materials, you would go over to the left-hand column if you're on a desktop, and you would find projects over here. So you can see the different functionality that's over there. Okay, so imagine that we want to start a study project. And again, the good Anthropic folks have already kind of lined up and custom made a set of instructions so that the chatbot really knows kind of where you're headed, where you're driving. And so the first thing we might want to do is kind of name it give it a course name of some kind. And then what we're going to want to do, I'll come back over here, we're going to create the project. And then what we're going to want to do is add the knowledge base. And so the knowledge base, in this case, I added my syllabus that I'm going to teach in the fall. I added a bunch of data, and then I added an academic paper. And what I was thinking about was, how would a student study for an exam that I was going to give? I don't actually typically give exams. We usually do demos and other kinds of projects, but I can talk about that later if that's of interest. But imagine you were studying for the exam in AI and Media Industries course, 6460. And so now the chatbot, the Claude project, has a set of instructions that's kind of custom made, and we can modify those, and I can show you how to do that. But it also has in its knowledge base, and it's sort of like personalized brain here, it has those materials, the syllabus, the data project, and the academic paper. And then you can imagine a prompt. And the prompt here might be, help me prepare for my exam. I'm walking me through some practice problems and explaining where I'm making mistakes. Okay, that's a pretty broad prompt. It'll get you some, reasonable outputs. But I want to say just a bit about prompts, and you'll get a lot of, I think, advice from the good team here if you ask for it about how to craft really good prompts. One thing is we should be very specific about what we want. This is kind of specific. We should also really give some detail about what we want for outputs, right? So you might ask Claude, can you ask me one question at a time about some particular topic within the course, and then give me feedback, a sort of one-on-one question by question tutorial. You might ask it, if you're trying to memorize something, to give you flashcards. You might ask it to give you to give you feedback on X, Y, or Z thing that you want to do. There are many different ways that you can instruct the model to give you outputs. And so we want to be, really specific about the inputs that we give it, and we want to be specific about the kind of outputs that we want. And that will make it all the more powerful. Okay. I had said that if you had not seen the Claude study project, that you could just go to create a project. This is just a sort of, this is just like the normal way of doing it. If there's not like a custom built thing for you, you just say create a project. And one of the things that you notice here is that you're going to give it the instructions. What are you trying to achieve? So you can see the red arrow here. And that's where you're going to sort of outline project goals, the subject. You're going to provide context. You're going to give it that set of rich instructions and context, so that Claude can perform the task that is at hand. I just wanted to show you the user interface here, where you can see where the project knowledge and the instructions, affordances, the buttons are, and they're over on the top right here. I guess depending on the size of your window, you'll see them move around a little bit. But this is where you can insert more project knowledge. You can specify the instructions sort of more tightly around a particular thing that you want to do. And one thing to note about the project knowledge is that the amount of stuff you can put in there is not infinite. They're actually, my course, we've been partnering with some local NGOs in the city of Boston, and it's been a 12-week engagement at this point. All 5 of our groups have built up pretty large bodies of materials, correspondence, draft deliverables, all kinds of stuff. And one of our first use cases that we sort of tried with Claude projects is for each team to upload like a lot of stuff that they have from that engagement with the NGO, to see if there could be some good new insights made, or a new kind of deliverable, or in any case, we quickly ran into memory issues. There's what's called a context window. The window for the project knowledge is not infinite. It's finite. It's something like a book length number of words or tokens. The Anthropic folks can correct me on the precise number, but you'll see they very carefully have provided a kind of metric. So when you upload, I'll go back. I think I can show you here. When you upload reference materials into that knowledge base, you can see that it gives you a kind of meter on how much capacity you have used. And one thing that the students and I have noticed is that you pretty rapidly bump up against the limit. And I'm sure that limit will be expanded over time. But for now, just know that you can't put everything in there, nor would you necessarily want to if you're trying to get really, really good outputs from the model. But in any case, the sort of project knowledge plus the instructions equals a ton of power and precision. This is the kind of thing where you think back on our like elementary and high school years. Imagine that you had the ability, to have a smart tutor right there all of the time, really helping you reinforce knowledge, learn new things, but particularly when it's exam time or project time, really being able to concretize knowledge in your brain in ways that are personalized and tailored, and that's what these models can do for you. Okay, so I've talked a lot. I actually want to stop for a second and just sort of take some questions. And I know it may not be that easy to follow along, but hopefully that was of some use. So we're at 6:35, Shauna, and happy to take questions. And then we'll move over to talking about career prep.
Yeah, hi, this is Megan. So if you have a question, you can just pop them into the chat or into the Q&A, and I can read them out for John. One question that came up, John, is as far as the knowledge base goes, is that a per project limit on the knowledge base, or is that once you've filled it up for one project, is that for all projects?
My understanding is that it's per project. Yeah, so just think of all of these projects as sort of like your custom chatbot on X, Y, or Z. And the more, I think the tendency is sometimes that more is better. But if you're trying to do something really specific, you're trying to make sure that model does not what we'd call sort of hallucinate, which is to give you a kind of false or made up answer. The tighter you can be in what you give it, I think the less likely you're going to get a hallucination or any kind of problem.
Another great, thank you. The next question from Miriam is what if I don't have any materials? Like if I'm trying to learn a new skill, but I don't know much about it yet.
Yeah. So I think the thing to do then would be to go out to the web and find some stuff that speaks to what you're learning. I mean, it could be, it could be academic papers, it could be news articles, it could be blog posts, it could be, all kinds of things that you could pull in to the project to make sure that that Claude project really knows sort of what you want to learn and discover. But yeah, there is if you don't have all that stuff lined up, it could be difficult, and you may have to do some research to really create a strong Claude project. By the way, I would welcome other people's opinions or expertise on that issue. There is web retrieval capacity. There's a button, I can show it to you a little later, that you can enable so that Claude could go out and pull some things in. But for the knowledge base itself, I'd want to highly curate that. Other thoughts? I don't know if the Anthropic team is here. I'd love to know if they're here, what they would advise.
Yeah, hey John, it's Allie here.
Hey, Allie.
I honestly agree with, hey, doing a great job. I agree with everything that you just said. I think that also when in doubt, it sounds a little bit meta, but ask Claude. What other materials or what other knowledge things can you upload to kind of influence the output that you have?
So another question, I don't know that we're going to get through all these questions and still have time, but I'm going to just grab a couple. Allie, this might be more for you. Does Northeastern's account with Anthropic have pre-built prompts or instructions?
That's a great question. And so similar to what John was just showing with a few of those use cases, it's basically a Claude for EDU type of product that we've enabled to allow students or faculty or staff to kind of have those pre-built templates in there. So that's correct.
Great. And then just one more is, can you delete content and reload other content for a project, or do you have to start over if you max out?
You definitely can delete. I think as John was showing with that knowledge capacity, sometimes I will remove data, take a static cut of it, and then re-upload it to make sure that I can get more different sources in as well.
Great. I think maybe we should bounce into the next use case, and I'll try to answer some of the other questions that we didn't get to in the chat. Thank you.
Okay. Let me just make sure. Okay, you can hear me, I hope. Here, let me bounce back over. Okay, so next use case, we're going to talk about getting ready for a job. I kind of have a silly set of examples here, which I'll show you, and hopefully you'll get a little bit of a kick out of it. But to get serious for a moment, so many students, my students, everyone across the university is constantly applying for co-ops, jobs, internships, fellowships. The sad news is, folks, that you have to continue to do that over your lifetime, and it can be really tedious, and it can be also really daunting. I find and I haven't gone on the job market in a while, but I've been at Northeastern 10 years and love it. But were I to go out, one of the problems you face is that every job that you apply for, you need to figure out what's the alignment between your skill set as reflected on your resume and your CV and your cover letter and what the job listing is. So that alignment is so crucial. And thinking about, like, what are they going to ask me in the interview is often quite daunting as well. One of the things that Claude is exceptional at is anticipating the kinds of questions you might get asked in an interview, as well as thinking about the match between the job listing and the requirements and the company or the firm or the organization and what you bring to the table. And so that's kind of our use case today, is thinking about the resume or even the interview prep. So again, the Anthropic folks have a sort of custom built create a career project teed up at the bottom of the input window. But you could, of course, create one yourself, and just by going to projects and specifying that you want to create something that helps you with your CV and job finding and alignment with job postings. But in any case, we're going to call this sort of like improving my resume or CV. And here's my sort of funny example, which is that my college currently has an outgoing dean, and we're hiring a new dean, and there's a whole job search. And I am totally underqualified for that, but I wanted to see what would happen if I put my CV in. Then I also thought, well, what if I wanted to become a dean someday? It's a lot of work and a lot of stress and probably more meetings than I could handle as an academic. But anyway, I was sort of role playing this a bit and seeing where I would get. So I asked it, create a personalized learning plan to help me transition from my current experience as a lowly associate professor to an exalted role as dean. Now, this is a silly use case, but many of you in this AI in Action seminar here are thinking along these lines, like, how do I upskill? How do I get to the next level? And the reality is that Claude, as well as ChatGPT and Gemini, have been trained on just a zillion data points relating to job finding, resumes, skill requirements, specifications for jobs. The models have seen it all, and so you're in really good hands if you can really specify this and figure out where you want to go and how you're going to get there. So if you look over on the right, you see again reference materials. You can also, if you have a custom set of instructions over here, you can edit those. So just sort of keep that in mind, and off we go. So, I asked, hold on just a second. I asked, sort of riffing on this use case, I thought, okay, what would happen if I did interview for this job right now? What if I had the hubris, the temerity to walk into an interview to be a dean, again, as a lowly associate professor. And so I uploaded my CV, and I just said, like, where are the holes in my CV with regard to this? And like, it was completely spot on, right? So look at the second red arrow, limited senior administrative experience, right? It looked at my very, kind of rambly academic resume and was like, yeah, don't have the management chops. But if I know that you don't have management chops, but here would be the strategy. If you walked into that interview, you would emphasize your administrative progression from program director to initiatives leader. You would highlight the fact that you got a Doctor of Ed in higher education administration, which I did, but it's kind of funny story. So it kind of was like trying to help me with the holes in my CV as I walked into this job interview, which I kind of thought was pretty cool. Okay, so a few other things that you could do with this. Match jobs to my skills. You can see these buttons down here. Improve my resume, get a career map. And you'll notice that if you can look over in the sort of reference materials, I really only have, I uploaded the actual job opening for the deanship in my college over here, and I uploaded my CV. But there, theoretically, there's a lot of other contextual stuff that you could put in there that would help. Like, you could put in the CVs of a bunch of like existing deans, right? And maybe you go out and you say, you ask Claude to do some web retrieval, and you ask it for deans who particularly focus on, arts, media, and design and communication. So maybe you get some really specific types of CVs, and you load those in, and maybe you compare where you are with like people who exist out there who have the next rung up the ladder job that you want, and then you help the chatbot, the Claude project, to really specify like what are those next steps. And there you could think about like what are the next classes I might need, right? So maybe I need, if you're in AI, maybe you need, some reinforcement learning classes. If you were in project management, maybe you need an accounting class, right? I mean, there's ways in which the models will help identify down to like the really granular level the kinds of things that you might want to learn, and get on that CV in order to get to the next level. They'll also just help you improve the resume. And so I think this is actually one of the best use cases, which is you have a job listing, you want to apply for it, but you recognize that like your resume isn't quite right for what the job listing is. And you don't really have like 10 hours to kind of go through line by line. And so ask Claude, what, many of us have like, like the big shaggy resumes that we all have, which is like everything that we've ever done, we kind of throw it in. But then we know we have like a page or two when we actually apply. And one of the things Claude can do is look at the job listing, look at the firm, and then look at your big shaggy resume and specify like how could you really tailor the resume or the CV or even parts of the cover letter. Though we should be very careful in all of this to fact check and to make sure it's in the voice that we want, all those things. Though Claude's quite good at that if you can give it examples of your voice. But I think this kind of like alignment and matching problem that we often have, especially when we need to apply in volume, can be in part solved, using Claude in a smart way. I mentioned project instructions. So we've looked at knowledge, we've looked at reference materials and knowledge base, and we know that we can put more stuff, less stuff. Allie very usefully pointed out that we can delete stuff, but we can also put more stuff in. The other thing we can do is we can kind of tweak the project instructions. So you may have, you may want your overall project instructions to be a little different, based on what you're doing. And some of this is trial and error, just exploring different kinds of ways of telling the model what you want, being specific, then sometimes being more general. You're going to have to try that. But the great thing is once you set up a workflow, Claude becomes this kind of chatbot that you can do lots of repetitive tasks. I mentioned repetitive tasks at the beginning as like one of the great things that I think generative AI can help solve for, so that you don't have to sort of enter all the same things and go through the same thought processes over and over. Because if you're job hunting, which we know can be long and stressful, it can take months, years even. I've had friends have to go through like multi-year searches to get the right thing. You're just doing the same thing over and over again, and you're trying to tweak and align with that prospective employer. So changing these instructions, changing the knowledge base, the reference materials, I think is wise. Okay, we're at 6:50, so I want to get to some like very general things and then open it up for questions again. So the world of custom GPTs, so what we might think of as internal chatbots for sort of repetitive tasks, best practices. We want to set goals. We want to specify the context. We want to think of it as like a really smart friend or a colleague. In the instructions, by the way, and there are lots of business cases which are being unpacked in the other parts of the seminar tonight. We can specify things about voice and tone or other output qualities. So if your cover letter, or your resume, or whatever other deliverable we have, if you want to specify that voice, like you can provide a lot of instruction there. And you can also put lots of you can put essentially instructions into reference materials and then use the file name specifically to call things out. So there's lots of flexibility in this. You can enable, there's a bunch of, for all of these internal chatbots, these sort of what we call custom GPTs, that's what they're sort of called over in the open AI universe, or projects, or Perplexity has spaces, Google has gems. There's a bunch of capabilities you can enable or disable. They vary a little bit, but RAG, which is web retrieval, image generation, sort of custom tools for data analysis. So keep those in mind. Those can all be part of the project. Keep experimenting. By the way, here's sort of the GPT, the custom GPT interface. Somewhat similar. Here's the GEM interface from the Gemini family of models. Keep testing, keep creating different kinds of chatbots. Every learner, every career is going to be different, and so you want to just keep personalizing and experimenting and finding the one that's going to really help you with those tasks that you're going to need to do over and over again, whether that's studying or whether that's applying for jobs. So with that, I'm going to wrap up my talk. Hopefully that was fun and interesting. Sometimes my students fall asleep and sometimes they say I'm a decent lecturer. I don't know how I did, but I'm very grateful for all your time tonight, and I'll hand it back over.
Thank you so much, John. I mean, I certainly learned a lot, and it looks like we have a number of questions that we might want to try to get to. John, if you can stop sharing the stop sharing button. Yeah, that would be great. Okay, so one of the questions from Mallory is, are some forms of source material better than others? So, as it comes to types of inputs, can you talk to that a bit?
Sure, and Ali, I'd welcome your expertise as well. I mean, my sense is yes. I mean, the better structured the text and the data are, the more legible. I don't mean visibly, but I mean the more it conforms to acknowledged knowledge structures, whether it's an academic paper or whether it's a set of like design or job specific or industry specific requirements, the better I think the better handle the model will have on producing the outputs that you want. But Ali, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's spot on, John. There's two parts of this. One, if there's a specific template that you're trying to follow, if you have a template that you can upload and have Claude have that output mirror something like that, you can definitely do that. And then when it comes to source material, I think I'd recommend using the best in class material that you would use for studying or for job searching anyway. So if there's specific knowledge bases that you tend to go to, or specific articles that you pull from online, make sure to continue to use that when using Claude. You don't necessarily have to change the information that you're feeding into it there.
Thank you. And Ali, I think this one might be for you, which is, what's the difference between Claude and Notebook?
From my understanding, Claude is Anthropic's model and product, and Notebook LM, I assume that's probably what they're alluding to, is a Google product.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we have a question. How do you improve RAG on local LLMs for making your own agents for a particular task?
So right now, a lot of the information that John was showing more static cuts of data. And so when Claude is pulling from that information or that context space, it is static instead of like that retrieval or augmentation. Continually for Claude specifically, I don't want to misspeak for any of the other models, as we have more integrations, for example, Google Docs or GitHub, that's when you'll start to have this RAG approach to having Claude get the data from those broader knowledge bases and resources.
Thank you. And what we're going to do right now, I'm going to pop, so we have a couple more questions that we do want to get to. But before we do that, I just threw into the chat a really quick feedback survey. So if I can ask people just in the next minute or so to fill that survey out for us, and then we'll get to answering the last few questions that I have here. So you can just take maybe 1 minute to fill that out. That would be great. And so while people are filling that out, another question we have here is, would something like Magic School AI help resolve some student data privacy concerns? I don't know what Magic School AI is. I hope one of you two.
I'm personally not familiar, yeah, okay. So I don't want to misspeak there.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. And I do think there are, there's so many unanswered questions about data privacy, and I think we're gonna need a lot of answers, and I think we're gonna do a lot of learning actually as a university, as we engage in the partnership, and frankly, not just with Anthropic, but with all the other models that my students and I use. I mean, there are a lot of questions, a lot of things that are unanswered, and I do know there are a lot of institutions that are quite worried about their data sort of flowing back into training data with the models, and there are a lot of general counsel's offices across the world quite nervous about that. So I would check with your local. With the folks who are responsible for data privacy within the institution. That would be my answer.
Okay, just a couple more here. Theoretically, so let me read the whole thing. Within HTML frameworks, Claude or other NLPs have limitations when generating images, as we know, right? And the question just disappeared. That's wild. The question literally just disappeared from the chat. Let's try a different one. One of the questions that's here is, what are some of the best tips that you can give to our audience around grounding a chatbot's output in training documents and certain data sets? So what would be kind of your best in class tip around that?
Al, you want to give it a shot, or do you want me to?
And so I think sometimes, again, I would speak to Claude or maybe a variety of these LLMs in the same way that you would speak to a teacher or a tutor. And so you can use natural language and just kind of think about that, and you don't have to overcomplicate it. So if you're trying to have Claude help prep you for a complicated test, tell Claude to explain the answers step by step. Or if it's trying to give you a quiz or flashcards, have the quiz start to get progressively harder every 5 questions, or have Claude give an explanation for the answers that are right or wrong depending. And you can ask all of these questions, again, very simply in that back and forth prompt and in that back and forth chat.
And I would say, we haven't really talked much about asking the model to adopt a persona, though I think you saw it on the screen. You tell Claude how you want Claude to behave in what role. So it could be you are a professional employment advisor, or you are a professor of engineering. And there are a whole bunch of reasons technically why actually asking the model to adopt a role actually makes it more accurate, more efficient, and like less likely to hallucinate. It basically has to do with how the model pays attention to its sort of training data and the corpus in which it's trained. But yeah, so being very specific about that role, and then being really, really careful about the ways that you specify the outputs that you want. Specifying steps, sometimes going step by step through things helps models. Providing examples, so we call that few shot, sometimes helps. Specifying the desired length of an output sometimes helps. It helps the model sort of hew or stick to that reference knowledge, reference material a little better.
Well, thank you so much. Oh, go ahead, Allie.
I was going to say, I know I said this already and it's meta, but again, have Claude help you create that best-in-class prompt. It does a very good job at that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, meta prompting. Yep.
I know we're at time, a little over time, but this was a really, really interesting and I thought highly educational session. So thank you, John and Allie, for all of your expertise and insight. And thank you to everybody who participated today. We have a couple more sessions this week that we would love to see you at. One that is focused on research and another that's focused on data visualization and custom applications. If you have any other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or drop us a line. I'm going to pop some information in the chat, but thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you all the rest of the week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.